Hi guys, I'm Karis K. Wilson. Welcome back to my channel. If you're an ambitious undergraduate student, graduate student, or young professional, then you are in the right place. So in today's video, I'll talk about the most important questions to ask yourself if you're considering taking a gap year or a break after graduating high school before attending your first year of college. Now, just so you know, this video serves as the beginning of a new series of YouTube content I'm creating about the best and most useful approaches to the college decision-making process. So let's go ahead and jump into the first tip and question you should ask yourself before deciding if you want to take a gap year or a break before going to college right after you're graduating from high school. So the first question that you should ask yourself is if you're interested in foreign travel and or social or community work in a completely different environment than one that you've grown up in or one that you're familiar with. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the Blackish TV series in which they have a conversation, Junior and Yara Shahidi and the parents talk about taking a gap year. But it's one of my favorite, and I think it's an important conversation that needs to be had in all communities, because I think sometimes there's confusion around why students take a break and if it's actually that useful. So just to provide a little bit of background on why people take breaks or why students take gap years, it's because they are interested in this kind of first tip that I'm telling you guys about, which is the foreign travel or doing some social type of work in a different community, much different than their own. And so that's the first question you want to ask yourself if you're interested in traveling to a foreign place. And there are a lot of articles, which I'll post in the description box below, that talk about the usefulness of a gap year and why foreign travel or social activities or work to help other communities is important if you're going to consider taking a gap year, if you want to maximize that time and get the most benefit out of taking a break between this kind of exiting high school and entering into college. Now, just so you're clear, I've already mentioned that this is kind of a British tradition, and the reason that foreign travel is the question you want to ask yourself is because it's important that if you're going to take this time, students usually do this to kind of discover exactly what it is they're interested in doing or studying, and it points to being more prepared as far as the literature that talks about kind of where this gap year originated from, which is the British tradition. And so that foreign travel and immersing yourself in a different environment kind of helps you grow within this time span of taking some time away from school. And then you're supposed to kind of jump back into school and feel more prepared and more highly motivated. I think is some of the literature that's used in some of the articles that discuss whether or not a gap year or taking a break is useful for students. The second tip or question that you want to ask yourself with regards to if you should take a break between high school and college is if you have the means to do so. So obviously this is really important. Not everyone has the means to take a break between high school and college. And by the means, I mean to take a gap year that's beneficial, that is kind of considering these questions that I'm talking to you about today in this video. And so when you're thinking about if you have the means, do you have the means to travel to a foreign place? Do you have the means to immerse yourself in a typical gap year experience? So some research suggests that the beneficial gains of soft skills or learning that comes or that is associated with taking a gap year typically comes from cross-cultural experiences rather than experiences in your home country or in a place that you're familiar with. And so it may not be all that beneficial if you take a gap year, but you can't necessarily afford to immerse yourself in a different environment to, again, gain kind of some of these soft skills or some of the learning that comes from taking a gap year and taking kind of a break and step back from school and from the typical traditional learning. It's also important to note with regard to considering the means and if you have the means to do a gap year that there are also programs within home countries that also research suggests it's not necessarily the most beneficial or as beneficial as going to a foreign place. And so again, they have a lot of different programs set up for students taking gap years, but there's not a lot of research that points to that being all that beneficial for students. And so that's something to consider as well when you're thinking about if you have the means to do a gap year. So the third tip is to know your goals. So that's the question you want to ask yourself. What are your goals? What is your reason for taking a gap year? When asking yourself this question, you want to think about the fact that most students entering into college have minimal financial support or some financial support. There are a lot of parents who do help out their kids and their children with paying for college, but oftentimes students have to take out a considerable amount of loans. And so you want to ask yourself the question about what your goals are and how much involvement your parents will have in this decision-making process. So you want to be very clear about if you're going to be making this decision on your own, or if it's a decision that your family is going to be involved in making with you. And so with that being said, if you're watching this video early on, if you're 1 or 2 years out from applying for colleges, this may be something that you want to begin to think about and also have conversations with your family about. So that conversation could be, hey, to your parents, hi, I'm considering taking a gap year and I want to figure out how we can make this work since I know you'll be helping me for college. Or the conversation might be, am I making decisions with regard to college kind of on my own? And if that's the case, you can kind of proceed with making the decisions about gap years, or if you will or will not take a gap year. And also you can seek that kind of wisdom and advice from your parental support system if that's something that they're willing to offer, and if that's something that you're interested in receiving, if you're going to be making the decision solely on your own, because you're going to be funding your own education, and that's kind of going to be a journey that you're embarking on just for yourself in and of itself. So that's something to think about. So tip number 4, and the next question that you want to ask yourself is, am I taking a gap year just to work? If this is the case, please don't do this if you have the option and if you can avoid doing this prior to attending college. So there are a lot of different options, and if you continue to tune into videos within this series of YouTube content I'm doing about college preparedness and how to select a college and decide kind of what is the right college and major for you, please consider what I'm saying in this video, and also continue to tune into the other videos to again gather more context and kind of understand some things to consider before deciding to work prior to attending college. So unfortunately, I know that college is expensive and it can be very costly, particularly if you don't have help or if you don't have a previous savings account to pay for college. Unfortunately, college systems have not caught up to the figuring out ways in which they can help students more easily afford to pay for college. And so if you decide to put off college and work, sometimes the situation you'll find yourself in is it's much more difficult to compete with the incoming freshman class, because those students are coming right out of high school, and that's kind of the way the system is built, is to bring in that next kind of incoming class. That's usually where all the focus is put on when you're talking about bringing students into college. So that is their sole focus and priority, bringing in those new people who were just seniors who are graduating from college, bringing in that incoming class. Also, you'll find it's very difficult to compete for scholarships. Now, there are different types of scholarships that I'm talking about here. So I'm talking about the scholarships that the universities typically offer that sometimes and oftentimes can be large sums of money that you can genuinely have a competitive advantage for coming out of high school, and you can have a real chance of coming out of high school. Not necessarily those kind of scholarships that are outside the university. I know those can be a lot more competitive and sometimes difficult to get or to figure out how to be considered or chosen with such a large pool of applicants. But both are really important and can help offset some of the college costs. But typically there are scholarships that are designated, a lot of scholarships that are designated just for the incoming class. And you really want to think about your opportunities financially in that way too. And so I think there are some different options and ways that you can realistically afford college or find ways to kind of offset some of the student loans that you might have to take out. But I wouldn't suggest taking a gap year or a break from college just to work to save up money to pay for college. And like I said, there will be many other videos where I'll kind of talk more in detail about why I would make that decision. But that's something that I think is important for if you're in the process of a year or two out, if you're getting ready to go into your final year now and you're just stuck and you're saying, should I attend grad school care? Should I take a gap year in a break? Those are some of the main questions you want to ask yourself, because that's typically what gap years are reserved for. And these are kind of also considering what I just said. Those are some reasons that you kind of want to avoid taking a gap year that sometimes I hear students talk about when they are trying to make the decision. So thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. Don't forget, this is the first video of a series of YouTube content that I'm creating about preparedness and figuring out what the best decision is for college for you. And so go ahead and hit the subscription and notification bell so you can be notified when I post the next video. See you guys in the next video. Bye guys.